In the beginning, the goddess of the sun gave a sword to her grandson and sent him down to rule the earth. It was a symbol of wisdom through strength, and with the mirror reflecting honesty and the necklace representing compassion, made up the three great treasures of the Japanese ruling house. From this emergence at the dawn of Japanese mythology, the sword has remained in legend and reality at the heart of Japanese life to this day. It is the symbol of a duality in the Japanese nature which the Western mind can hardly comprehend. From prehistoric times, the Japanese were fierce fighters, and the sword was their primary weapon. But there were two periods in Japan's long history when the beauty of the sword came to be venerated above its efficiency. The first was the Heian era in the 9th and 10th centuries, an age of culture and enlightenment when the sword was worn as an ornament. Centuries of clan wars were to follow that brief golden age. The tough, courageous, independent samurai was the key to conquest, and the sword was his supreme ally. Consideration of its beauty did not reappear until peace came, 200 years of it, beginning in 1600. It was about this time that Bushido, the code of the warrior, came into full statement, and it was then that the sword began to be considered not only as an instrument of death, but also as a work of art. The swordmaster, whatever the tumultuous events going on around him, was always honored as a craftsman of great skill and an artist of power, for it was he, with prayer and ritual and knowledge, who could create this sophisticated weapon from the simple elements of earth, air, fire, and water. The swordmaster today works much as his forebears have done through the centuries. He has help. An assistant, even another master, may do part of the preparation work for him. The tools are ancient and simple. A furnace is dug in the ground, filled with hot charcoal, and fanned by special bellows. The mass of metal that will become the blade is welded to a handle, and when it is white hot from the flame, will be rested on a block to take the blows of the assistant's heavy hammer, signaled by taps from the master's smaller one. Metal for the swords comes from the iron sands mined in central Japan and smelted by an almost extinct process. As he forms the blade, the swordmaster must balance two forces, strength and flexibility. The edge must be sharp and strong, the blade supple enough not to break in battle. The smith folds the hot billet over itself, heating, adding flux, cooling and hammering so that when the metal has been folded the requisite 18 to 20 times, he has produced hundreds of thousands of laminations within the blade. The word samurai comes from the Japanese saburau, meaning to serve, and the name was first used for personal attendants or domestic servants. The tradition of service to others was primary in the early history of the samurai. Blood and glory would modify that tradition. The greatest art of the swordmaster comes as he begins to shape the blade, drawing the steel out and out from the billet. Only the smith will know when he has it as he wants it, thick and strong from the ridge line to the back, thinner and thinner from the temper line to the front edge of the blade. Fighter spirit was never long dormant in the Japanese. In graves dating back to the 4th century, tiny clay figurines were found. They were the haniwa, fierce fighters of prehistoric times mounted for battle, complete to the swords that hung from their belts. Warrior was prepared to die at any moment in battle and would refuse any survival that required him to turn his back on the enemy. To keep face was more important than life, and such was this exaggerated sense of personal pride that he would, by his right as a samurai, kill anyone who offended it in the smallest way. He fought for his family and his family line. He might owe fealty to the lord who paid him, but his income was so inadequate that the promise of reward made treachery and betrayal everyday matters of custom. character of the steel begins to emerge. The most beautiful feature of the sword is the pattern of the steel in the temper line. With utmost delicacy, the swordsmith fashions the pattern he wishes the temper line to take. To make it, he coats the finished blade with clay heavily toward the back, more and more thinly toward the edge. There are hundreds of these traditional patterns. They may be used singly or in combinations. The choice is the master's. When the clay is thoroughly dried, the blade is ready for its most crucial ritual, the final tempering. The master puts on his ceremonial robes and works in complete darkness so he can determine a special, particular red color of the steel. At that precise moment, he makes a prayer and plunges the blade into a long tank of water. The exposed edge hardens instantly. The clay slows the cooling of the rest. The sword becomes a blade of relatively supple steel enclosed in a thin layer of very hard steel. If all has gone well and the master has done his job properly, he has produced a work of art and he can be proud to sign it. From its tempering, the blade goes to the polisher. 12 stones, from the very coarse to the exquisitely fine, will bring the sword to a high polish. The polisher must be a man of infinite patience, but he must also know steel, for it is he who will reveal the patterns in the blade. The polisher can ruin a sword, or he can bring it into the realm of high art. For centuries, only the ruling families in the warrior class could carry the sword. The unit of the economy in Japan was the measure of rice, and he who controlled the rice lands controlled the country. Samurai were key figures during those hundreds of years of war. They were needed, therefore powerful, and it is not surprising that Japan's first long period without war, which began with the time of unification in 1600, should also signal the decline of the samurai. They were fighting men. They did not take well to peace. The maker of the scabbard, or shirasaya, is a special kind of artisan. When the sword is displayed or carried on ceremonial occasions, its furnishings are elaborate and decorative. But the shirasaya is its usual housing. It is made to fit with minute precision the sword it is to protect. The wood is hoa, grown in the highlands of Japan, shielded from water and kept carefully dry so that it can never rust the metal. With his eye on the blade, the shirasaya maker creates two halves of the scabbard, each hollowed with meticulous care and then sealed together with rice glue. The result is the sculpture in wood that houses the sculpture in steel.
Skill.
To hold the sword firmly in the scabbard, a wedge-shaped collar is attached to the blade. This collar, or habaki, must be worked to fit the individual blade precisely. The artist who makes the habaki is part sculptor and part jeweler, working in silver or gold. Everything that related to the sword was required to be on a level of artistry in keeping with the power and beauty of the blade. The guard, which protected the swordsman's hand, was made of steel, copper, silver, or other metal. There were patterns and designs on both sides. The hilt of wood was covered with skin of the ray fish, then bound in silk, leather, or cotton tape or cord. The tip of the scabbard was protected with pommels of minute design. The stands on which the swords were displayed when they were not in service were superbly carved or inlaid. The kinship between the samurai and his sword far outweighed its aesthetic or its function, for it was an expression of the meaning of his life. It was thought to have a spiritual power of its own. It was made by a master who, in true Shinto tradition, understood the structures of nature before he undertook to change them. For the samurai, he created a blade of intense beauty that would kill, quickly and well. The samurai lived with beauty and with death, and he loved both, an attitude almost impossible for Westerners to understand. Whatever the fact of reality or the overlay of legend, the model of the samurai remains the same. He is a hero. He is lonely and alone. He dies unafraid, fighting unbelievable odds. A great chronicle of samurai heroics characterizes him in this way. The sound of the bell of Gien Shoja echoes the impermanence of all things. The hue of the flowers on the teak tree declares that they who flourish must be brought low. The proud ones are but for a moment like an evening dream in springtime. The mighty are destroyed at the last. They are but as the dust before the wind.